really it come about at Villa, possibly then at Newcastle, that I was this washed up old dinosaur who, and it's something that I have to try and readdress. The one thing about Mike Ashley, never tell you any bullshit.
Right.
Here's the pot of money we've got. This is what the club's earned this year, so get on with it. Do you know Craig Hope, on my third game in charge, said I'd sent on a substitute and just told him to go and play anywhere he wanted? As if.
Yeah. If a manager says you're not training very well, you're not training very well.
And you're not in the team or the squad, and you're 80 million quid's worth, it's a big call.
This is Up Front with me, Simon Jordan. I believe there are a lot of vacuous, uninformed, unchallenged opinions out there. I want to get to the bottom line and cut through the nonsense. So with this podcast with William Hill, I'm going to get people with strong views who think they can stand them up to proper scrutiny. There's a good chance I might learn something along the way, and more importantly, so might you. Joining me in today's episode, a 3-time Premier League winner and a defensive stalwart who captained a Manchester United team that kickstarted Sir Alex Ferguson's dominance in English football. He managed over 1,000 games across a 24-year period, crossing the managerial divides in the Midlands, Sheffield and the North East. And this may be the first one-on-one interview we've had since I employed him at Crystal Palace over 22 years ago. Steve Bruce, welcome to Up Front.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Simon.
There's a possibility this interview could last longer than your job did at Palace. We'll leave that one alone, shall we?
We'll leave that one alone.
What did you think? What did you think about the old mediocre comment this week?
I know. Well, my son and I were listening to the radio, and you were very, you were sort of saying that Harry Maguire was mediocre and everything.
I was,
and then gave a quote that Steve Bruce was mediocre.
Yes,
so
I did.
I looked at Alex as if to say, how dare he?
But I took it from the playbook of what you told me. You said to me when you came to Palace, you said to me, you talked about yourself, and people are now portraying it as you being humble, that you made the best of yourself, and that you weren't the best central defender around, but what you were, you exhausted every ounce of the abilities that you had.
Absolutely, Simon. Listen, I was just average at everything. I mean, some would say I wasn't very big, hopeless on my left side, not quick enough. So all of them things straight away, you think, well, how has he gone on to the one thing I did do was made the best of myself. And when I got the opportunity to go to Man U, I thought, I'm going to grasp it here, even though it was daunting, walking into a dressing room where, for a start, Paul McGrath.
But you were a leader, weren't you, Steve? I mean,
well, I've been asked a million times, Simon, how do you define a leader? What is a leader? And in every team I played for since I was a kid at 8 till I finished, I'd captained every team I'd played for. So there must be something in it. People love a trier, love people who give 100%, and I was a little bit noisy. Some of the captains these days are quiet. They lead by example. Harry Kane, I wouldn't have thought was a shouter and baller, but you watch him every week and leads from the front of how good he is. So I suppose I got the best of myself and then would drag other people if I could.
Because that was my point in the observation that I made, and I said to Alex, your son, I didn't quite mean it like that. Right? But what I said was he could be mediocre at times, but he was a great leader, and he was a leader of men. And I remember when we sat down, and I didn't want to interview you, as you know, because of the situation in the past of Huddersfield, and I didn't think you'd behaved in a certain way. But when I sat with you, and I listened to you and I put aside my preordained bias about my perception of you, my biggest takeaway and my unadulterated viewpoint was I can understand why this guy captained Manchester United. And when you came into Palace, albeit briefly, I saw it. I saw the standards. I saw the manner in which you interacted with the players, the manner in which you interacted with every aspect of the training ground, even to the point where a coach once came into the training ground too quickly. And you were out in the car park going, whoa, hang on, there's players here, what's going on? I know it's a small example, and we used to talk about the idea of apprentices cleaning the facility, the equipment in the gym, and the PFA getting involved and saying that shouldn't be done. But I wanted to talk about your journey to go from, how does somebody, besides what we discussed, which is your leadership capabilities, how does somebody that struggled to get a pro career going, lands at Gillingham, and then within 6 or 7 years is in the dressing room at Manchester United as one of the first signings that Alex Ferguson signs? What are the characteristics that drives that person from the difficulty of getting into professional football?
When I was a kid, Simon, and I was young in the North East, football was the way out. It was tough, it was hard working, and I was going to the shipyards for the first time after a week there thinking, I never want to work in here. How these lads do it is beyond me. It was freezing cold, horrible day, and I decided then I'm going to do everything I can to play football, because that was the only way that I could see that I was going to get out. When I was young, would you believe, I was small. So by the time I was 15, 16, I was still 12, 13, hadn't developed at all. So I needed a bit of time, and of course I went to Burnley, for example. I was there for years and went to Sheffield and Bolton. Everybody said the same thing. Never going to be big enough, never going to be strong enough. Not for us. Until I went to Gillingham, probably last resort. Went all the way from Newcastle to Gillingham.
What league were they in?
A guy
Division 2?
In Division 3, the old Division 3.
Right, yeah.
And a guy called Peter Kirkley took me down there, who's still around the northeast today.
Right.
And I went down with Peter Beardsley. I think I told you that story. I went down with Peter Beardsley. Peter was the same thought of me, only this high, small. And they turned Peter away and kept me, which I thought was the start of the apprenticeship. So I had 2 years as apprenticeship, and it was tough. I get up in the morning and you had to clean all the boots. There's only 2 apprentices back then. There wasn't all of this. Had to help the groundsman. It was 7 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night till you went away. And there was an Irish fella who just lost his wife last week, Bill Collins, who really took to me and helped me. And without him, I might have been struggling. But he sort of took me in, and Bet did, bless her, took me in and looked after me. And he thought the world of me as a player. I don't know why, because everybody was doing this with me. And he thought I had what it took. So without his belief in me, probably, it might not have happened. But I was determined. When I was 18, I represented England. Not a mean feat for somebody playing for Gillingham. I broke my leg when I was 21, just when I was starting to get a bit of publicity and all the rest of it, bigger teams watching. So that put a dampener on things for 6 months, 8 months. And I thought maybe, Simon, after getting to 23, 24, that my chance had maybe come to go and play go to a different level. So I decided then to leave my contract, which back in the day, you're not Bosman then, it was that long ago, right. You had to go to tribunal. So I went to tribunal and picked Norwich. I could have gone to Norwich, Coventry, picked Norwich because Dave Watson, the centre-half, was playing for England, and so was the goalkeeper. Right. Chris Woods thought, I'm going to play alongside Dave Watson, because Dave Watson, the old Everton one, not the original one, Sunderland, because I think I'm better than him. So I went to Norwich and played in the high league. I ever told you my debut against
No.
I never told you against Liverpool. Opening day of the season, boiling hot day, we're playing against the mighty Liverpool, Souness, Dalglish, all that lot, who were by far the best team in the country at the time. Boiling hot day, Jan's 7.5 months pregnant, opening day, me debut. The kick off down the right and the cross it early into the box. I thought I can headed it into the top corner, own goal, 35 seconds. Thought, that's not a good start at all. There were a bit of rumblings in the crowd. What the hell have we got here? 20 minutes later, Dalglish, famously with that turn and jink, I can still see it now, turned Dave Watson and bent one in the top corner. I thought, I can head that clear, and I've headed that in my own goal and all. So I've done two own goals in 22 minutes. Not a bad start, is it? So I was up against it from the off, but again, people believe you. Ken Brown, Mel Machin. Mel Machin was a fantastic coach back in the day. Really, really above his, probably
before his time.
Yeah, one of them inevitable ones. What we played, Norwich had of playing. So that's the way it started. And before I knew it, then I'm getting a phone call from Sir Alex.
Yeah,
which obviously is life changing for you.
Talk to us about Ferguson, because obviously he's the stuff of legend now, and that's not just because a passage of time has passed when Man United are not doing particularly well, but because of his unique achievements and the passage of time that he had at United. Try and describe Ferguson for people that don't know.
Do you know, Simon, for a start, his work ethic was unbelievable. Every time I went to the training ground, his car was there, whether it was 6 o'clock in the morning or I used to go back at night time when my son was in the start of the academy. 7 o'clock at night, he's still there. So his work ethic is something which every one of us, he was unbelievable in that respect. And when you get to know him, there's a fierce loyalty he has that when you're with him, you understand, and he's got you. How you replicate that, I do not know, but there's a trust between once you've got to a certain level. You have to get that certain level first.
With him.
Yeah. However, if you step out of line or you did something which was detrimental to Man U or the dressing room, you were out.
Mm-hmm.
And he was unbelievable in that. For instance, the Sancho thing, now we're reading about it. It wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened with him.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have nailed that before we start. Now, in 90s, we didn't have social media where everybody's got a platform now, Simon. I get that. But he wouldn't have accepted it. Whether you were Sancho, Yapstam, David Beckham, Paul Ince, Mark Hughes, wherever, he was relentless in his pursuit of making Man U the biggest and best team in the world. And to start with that, in the 90s, we had to beat Liverpool, the great Liverpool team, and he was ferocious, week in and week out, how we have to beat Liverpool. And he was, when he takes you on the journey with him, and I was privileged to be nearly 10 years there, some of the stuff you look back on now and think, is he a genius? I'm going to give one never against Glenn Hoddle, because I thought Glenn Hoddle was one of the best players in the world when he was young. However, when he was a bit older and he was managing Chelsea, we were playing Chelsea in the cup final. All week he went on, Sir Alex, we'll score first against Chelsea, we'll win 4 or 5. FA Cup final. You don't win FA Cup finals 4 and 5, not very often anyway. That was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all week. Remember, all of us, after every training session, score first, we'll win 4 or 5. So I remember asking him when we're walking off the training ground, boss, can I ask you, where do you get that from? How we score first, we'll win 4 or 5? He goes, because Glenn Hoddle, who's the substitute, he's not got the legs anymore, especially at Wembley, and he'll bring himself on in sacrifice of his defensive setup, and he'll come on in the middle of the pitch, and he can't run anymore, Glenn, and we'll swamp through the middle of it. We'll cut through them like a knife through butter, and we'll win 4 or 5. Okay, what happens? 62 minutes, we score first. Glenn Hoddle brings himself on. Then we get to 75 minutes, we're 4-0 up. And I'm thinking now, is this fella a genius? Is that genius? Or is that just...
He just knows his stuff.
Oh, he knows his stuff. And all of the decisions he made, he got the big ones obviously right, or he wouldn't have gone to what he's won and achieved.
So he got 4 years to get himself into a position where, I mean, there were people that were beginning to get a bit antsy about his performances. I think there were Ferguson out banners at the time. Yeah. The rumour is that Mark Robins scores a goal away to, and a lot of this stuff is urban myth, but you can tell me because you were there.
Yep.
That Mark Robins scores a goal away to Notts Forest in the FA Cup.
Yep.
And that keeps Alex in a job.
Well, is
that true? And did you guys feel that?
Well, Martin Edwards, to this day, said if we had lost, he'd have kept faith in Alex Ferguson. So you'd have to believe the chairman, and he ran the show at the time.
Yeah.
So, and whether the pressure would have got to him, but we were 5th bottom or something, Simon, of the Premier League. We were of the Championship at the time it was called. But the FA Cup, and let me tell you, the FA Cup. When a manager needs a little bit of luck, we all need a bit of luck, right? We never drew a team in the same league as us. From the first one at Notts Forest, the Championship, and we were always drawn away from home. And even the semi-final, Crystal Palace beat Liverpool. Even the one to beat in the final
dropped away once.
It was wow. Crystal Palace have turned over Liverpool. What an opportunity! So whether he would have done, who knows? But that cup cup ignited.
That's what I was going to ask you. And that's what I was going to ask you, because from that, I mean, obviously Palace have been very good to you. I give you a job, you go and get a better job at Birmingham and go and make lots and lots of money elsewhere.
No, I'll say it now in front of everybody, Simon. I'll let you down, as I've said many times, that I believe I let you down. I don't know really why.
But that was
I jumped towards Birmingham, maybe because I played there for 2 years.
I didn't bring it up for that purpose.
No. I think of people that
you were brilliant, and I think we missed an opportunity for whatever reason, because I think that the dynamic between us was brilliant.
Yes.
I think that you were an exciting young manager. And I think that the standards that you brought, there was no surprise to me we were top of the league. And by the way, you were brilliant at that time. The circumstances were the circumstances. They're well rehearsed. We put them to bed. And if anyone wants to find out about them, read my best-selling book. But the point is this:
it would have to be best-selling, of course.
But the point is this: is that as a result of that FA Cup final, Manchester United begin to kick on, and the engines start, right? And now the myth begins, and the Ferguson era kicks off. You don't win anything. You win the FA Cup, and then you start to move through the gears. You win the Cup Winners' Cup. It then begins, doesn't it? So what was the change in United? Something changes from 4 years of struggling and changing the dynamics of the football club, getting the culture right, getting to a point where people are beginning to get a bit tired of the Ferguson regime. You win the FA Cup. You win the Cup Winners' Cup. You come second in the league. Then you win the league, and then the engines start. What was the change in mentality change?
The two cups enabled us straight away, and that little bit of luck, what you need. The draws were very kind to us.
Yeah, you still got to beat what's in front of you, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, of course. The first year when we were second in the league to Leeds, the year before the Premier League started, we were fantastic up until Christmas, and really took the water in, if you want to call it, where I'm from in Newcastle. We really struggled when the real pressure came on to win the league, and that was the holy grail. I mean, can you imagine Man U 26 years? 26 years.
You might have to imagine it again, the way you're going.
Oh, don't even go there. 26 years, it was that played us down, and we didn't cope with it. We didn't cope with it well enough, and I think we'll all admit it that we bottled it a little bit. It's a horrible word, bottled it, but we, from being so good and attractive to watch, to become pretty sterile towards the finish.
Talking about honours, how was it for you? I mean, I made a throwaway comment the other day, which you've admonished me for about mediocre, and lots of people have done so as well on social media. But how do you feel about never being given the opportunity to play for England?
Well,
who was in front of you?
Do you know the ones in front of me were Bobby Robson to start with, were Terry Butcher, who went on to play 80 times, Tony Adams, 60 times. Did Des Walker get something like 50, 60 caps? All of them people were, but I honestly thought I was probably at my best not in the Robson era. Maybe Graham Taylor, who I knew I captained England B team, was called up to play for England B team, who played in Malta, and in the I'll never forget that in the dressing room he's gone Seaman's in goal, Sterling's at right back, Steve Bruce, you're centre half, and you are captain. I have to tell you, in front of all the players, you wouldn't be my captain, but Bobby Robson's made you captain because Bobby's not here, so he wanted you to captain the team. But I stress that you wouldn't be my captain.
Nice.
Right, so okay. I've been handed the captaincy of England, and straight away I've got a comment where I thought, well, Graham Taylor, and he was only stepping in for Bobby Robson then.
Why would he say that? What would
I hear great things about Graham
Taylor.
Yeah,
it's a surprising one.
So do I. Really, I don't know. I think whether he wanted to make that in front of the group, that it wasn't his choice, and he was just telling the whole group. I really don't know, but I really felt it within myself to think, I've just been made captain of England and had a comment like that with Graham, because all I've ever heard of is really great things about Graham Taylor.
Yeah, me too.
Lo and behold, of course, Simon, Graham Taylor takes over from Bobby Robson.
Yeah.
When Bobby calls it a day. And I knew then, cooked, my dinner's cooked, I knew then that it was never going to happen, because, and that's fair enough. We all see different players, and I mean, the big raging debates about Harry Maguire. Is he a player or is he not a player? Some people say he is.
We'll talk about him, don't worry about that.
Yeah, and so I can get it. It's the biggest thing that went against me was, let me tell you, when Terry Venables had it, and Brian Robson was obviously then his assistant, there was a friendly at against Nigeria in Wembley. And
they called Ruddock up for that?
I don't know who they called up. I don't know.
Go on,
but I declined it.
Did you?
I did, yeah. I thought, I've got to the end of my career without
Or did you think
it
was a pity vote?
A sympathy vote.
That's what I
mean. Vote, yeah, something like that, where Brian had probably... they needed a centre-half, and it was one of these games in the middle of June or whenever it was, a friendly at Wembley. And I declined it, and I'm glad I did, because I wouldn't have just wanted Steve Bruce one England cap. I was closer to playing for Ireland than I was ever England, but that's another story.
When you were in your pomp at United and the team was flying, and that period of 6 years, certainly from 90 to 90, you live in 96, you go to Birmingham in 96, don't you?
Yeah.
So during that 6 years, you win X amount of league titles, you win X amount of FA Cups and European Cup Winners' Cups, right? Who was the most talented player that you played with?
Oh, talent. How do you split them? I would say the most unique and talented. You know what I think of Brian Robson and Roy Keane, let me tell you. And Giggs was sensational when he was a kid. He's the only one, Giggs, who I first seen at 14, 15, where he said, oh my God.
We know where he's going.
Oh, wow. He was so unique and so different. They don't come along. Maybe we've got one playing for England now in Bellingham, but this kid, Ryan Giggs, was something else. I have to say, for the biggest impact I've ever seen come and take Old Trafford by the shirt, by the collar, was Cantona. Was unbelievable in his presence, in his makeup, his skill as a footballer, his flair. He was different. I've never seen anybody command a room like the way Cantona did. And he had an air of arrogance, but could back it up. Now, we needed to back it up because we accepted him being different. And how Fergie managed him was different. However, Saturday come along, a semi-final or a final or a big game, Cantona scored, turned up. When we have to win at Newcastle, Cantona scores at the back post. Beat Liverpool in '96 in the cup final. Cantona, he was unbelievable. As for greatest players, him, as I said, how do you
quantify that?
How do you try and say Ince or Keane? Robson, Ince is a top player, but not on the level maybe of Keane and Robson.
Cantona's the one that stands out for you as having
one that come into Man U and said, right, I am the missing link.
I'm going to ask you, because you've told me, and people will obviously know about this incident, another Crystal Palace related story, with Erik and the circumstances at Palace. You'd have been in that game.
Yes.
You'd have been in that dressing room.
Yes.
And obviously Erik, the game was a spiky game. You guys were getting booted around a pitch by people like Southgate and whoever else was on the pitch, right? And Erik loses his stack with a fan, jumps in the crowds. And I remember you telling me about it, about the atmosphere in the dressing room after the game, where even Erik, who was given special dispensation, it described the scene of what everyone walked into.
In the little dressing room area at Sellers Park, it's only small, and there was people in there from all sorts. I think the FBI at one page would be in there. It was an incredible scene, and Erik was cool and Luke, and we only drew one each. And I remember Sir Alex is picking out a few. Sharp, you haven't done anything at all. You never gone past him. You've never dribbled past anybody. You're hopeless you were. And then he gets to Erik, and I don't know what you're up to, and just brushed past him. But the whole melee outside was something big has just happened. Yeah, this is huge. I remember Erik though, and by the way, he's got a scrape on his back like this because he's hit that advertising board, and he now can't put his shirt on because it's all the back of him is a mess. And he's getting dried and all the rest of it, and then he's quiet and he was quiet, In his demeanour, he says, I think I'm in a bit of trouble there. I says, Eric, a bit of trouble? Jesus, you're in serious trouble. But he says, called my mother, whatever he called her, and I'd do the same thing again. And up until this day, he'd do the same thing again. But it was huge. And of course, you're Man United.
Yeah, it gets escalated.
It's a huge now story. It's making this news at 10 headlines, isn't it? And of course, everybody's clamouring for a piece of him. And you know, Simon, he got sentenced to prison to start with.
I know he did, yeah.
Mind you, after 100 hours of working in Salford in all these charity shops.
He'd rather gone to prison.
you come in and said, I think I would have rather gone to prison for 2 months.
Did all of you sit there when he did the press conference and go, what the fuck are you talking about?
I have to tell
the
you that
seagulls follow the trawler.
Well,
did any of you know what that meant?
All of us never questioned him because he was sort of, we just let him get on with his own sort of space. But I was determined to ask him where that come from because everybody, the son's right in there, he's got the lunatic and he's this, that and the other and all sorts. And I remember sitting opposite him where we dressed and I says, Eric, I've got to ask you, where the hell did you get when the seagulls follow the trawlers and sardines? Where did it come from? Typically Eric says, I don't know, but it was fucking good, eh? It brought the whole dressing room. We all thought, just chuckled like that. As only he could get away with. He could get away with it. But it was. It was all magical, wasn't it? You'd have loved it to be able to do something like that in front of them all when the seagulls follow the trawlers. One of the most unbelievable moments I think I've ever witnessed.
When you look at the list of managers United have had post Alex. So we've got Moyes, Van Gaal, we've got Mourinho, Solskjaer, Rangnick, and we've got Ten Hag. When you look at the period of time, who did the best job of those managers in your view?
Well, Mourinho again won a couple of trophies, didn't he?
Yeah.
However, he wasn't everybody's cup of tea with
the way he played,
the way he plays or whatever. I don't think you can ever criticise him because of just.
I think he's a brilliant manager. I do.
Me too. Me too. When the word "great" comes into the conversation,
he's in that conversation.
He's in it. Yeah. Mourinho has to be.
He should have based himself in Manchester, though. He should have got himself a house rather than piss-balling around staying in the Lowry.
I really can't believe that by living in a hotel. That's good for anybody.
I'm surprised United let him do it.
Yeah, well, there again, it's there again. I think now you can look back and say it's 10 years. The manager's done really well in the last 12 months, considering what he's had.
Mm-hmm.
I think he knows, and all of Man U fans know, that there's still a hell of a long way to get anywhere near.
So if you're looking at this group
of
managers, and I'm pinning you down on who, from Moyes, Van Gaal, Mourinho, Solskjaer and Rangnick, have done a job befitting of a Manchester United manager, who would you pick out?
Well, it would have to be, for me, Mourinho, because of what he's won.
Right.
And as I said, people weren't talking about style and all the rest of it, but he brings you trophies. And he's been like that. He's a relentless winner. Whatever went on why, I don't know, he didn't ever move to the Northwest, I don't know. But for me, Jose is a special talent.
Ten Hag. I mean, you've got this situation where you had the initial introduction of Ten Hag with Ronaldo and the problems that he had there. You've now got a situation with Jadon Sancho. I'm of the mindset that I think it's a manager's right to call players out if they want to. But I think it's often the case when a manager starts calling the players out in a public domain, he's beginning to flounder.
It's difficult, Simon, because something what you maybe try to keep in-house leaks this time.
He didn't leak it though, Steve, did he?
No, he tweeted it, didn't he?
No, not Sancho.
Oh, Sancho, sorry.
Don't worry about what he said.
Yeah.
I'm talking about what Ten Hag said. Ten Hag, he's the one that chose to turn around and say, this player don't train properly and doesn't do that. Now, he's taken that into the public domain.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I don't think Ferguson would have done that.
No.
I think he'd have had you and dealt with you.
He dealt with you in a different way. And I get that. Listen, Ten Hag's had to deal with the Ronaldo situation, which I think personally he did very well with.
Do you?
I do. Can it be?
Why do you think he did well with it? I thought he bottled it.
Well, I thought in the end he's gone. In the end, Ronaldo had to go.
Yeah.
And he'd gone.
Yeah.
Because let's be fair.
He went because Ronaldo created such a frigging storm. He goes and does a Piers Morgan interview and sets the bloody place on fire. You couldn't do anything else, could you?
He couldn't have done anything else. But I'm talking about his handling of him as the player, because let's be fair, Ronaldo wasn't the 18, 20-year-old he was
but we all
second
said that.
time.
Yeah.
However, he still did score 20-odd goals. I think he's had difficult in his first year, the Ronaldo thing, the Sancho thing, the Mason Greenwood in terms of that debacle. And now, of course, he's got Sancho, which are big issues because he's a big player.
Is he? Is he? What's he done for United?
He hasn't done anything yet for United. And I think
58
that's
games,
where,
2 years.
I think that's where he needs to now. Because then again, it looks to me from the outside again, saying when we're talking at the top of the interview, when you could talk about Man U. Different story of Borussia Dortmund. He's ripping the Bundesliga up.
Different league, different quality.
He looked, from the time he come in, lost.
Yeah. Too big a club for him.
Maybe too big a move for him. The demands on him, all the rest of it. He found it really, really difficult. That's because he's got talent.
Yeah.
The kid. He's got talent. We haven't seen it enough. But I honestly believe that criticising the manager and the way he's done
it.
Doesn't need to.
Yeah, done. Yeah. If a manager says you're not training very well, you're not training very well.
And you're not in the team or the squad, and you're 80 million quid's worth, it's a big call.
Going to move you on to another controversial, and this is where the mediocre comment came from about me with you the other day.
Yeah.
The situation with Harry Maguire and what's going on there. I mean, what do you make of it all? I mean, his mum's come out and said things and felt that the situation was beyond the level of fairness in terms of the abuse that apparently is coming from the media and punditry, which I can't quite relate to, but we'll get to that in a second. But the player himself, you know, he's out of the United side. He's getting picked for England without playing. He's clearly not in the greatest of form. I don't blame the own goal for him.
No.
The other day against Scotland, that can happen to anyone, right?
Yep.
But this whole situation with Maguire, what does he do? What can he do? What should he do? Well,
I thought, Simon, when he had the opportunity to go to West Ham, I don't know how it fell down or what happened. You know, we're not privy to these things. I thought that might have been an answer. Go and play, different environment, and
be valued.
Start again.
Be valued.
And be valued.
Yeah.
There's obviously, it's got to the level where I don't think any of us have ever really seen it to that.
Do you think that? Who from, though?
The supporters.
Yeah.
And whether they're England or even when we go to Scotland the other day, they're sort of ridiculing.
Yeah, it's parody, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And now I went to see Harry and bought him when I was at Hull, and my chief scout was Stan Tennant.
I know all about Stan. Yeah.
He's mad as a rocking horse, but absolutely
indeed.
Great for me was as a chief scout. He says, we're going to go and see Harry Maguire today. They're playing in this Mickey Mouse thing at Sheffield United in the EFL Trophy or whatever. We'll go in and we'll go and put our caps on and we'll just sit. We're not going to sit in the director's box because they'll know we want to try and buy him. So when Harry walks out, and he's only 21 now, when Harry walks out, I thought, he's got a strange shape and he's got a strange gait the way he is. Big, powerful lad, but is he slow on the turn? Is he slow on the turn? He's not the quickest. Handles the ball really, really well. Great in both boxes. So all this time at the Stan, I've gone, I'm not so sure, Stan. I'm not so sure about him. So Stan then goes, let me tell you, he's 21. He's won Player of the Year at Sheffield United for the last 3 years on the spin. He's played 150 games by the time he's 21. He says he's not the quickest, and he's that, but he says, then Stan said to me, and by the way, you weren't the quickest, and your left foot was hopeless, and you weren't very big. But so we give you a chance. I think he's a player.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Stan, you've seen him 8, 10, 12 times. So we bought him. And I took him. And he didn't get in the team straight away because I had some good players. I just wanted to nurse him through a little bit. When he did get his chance, he handles the ball in immaculately. He's good in both boxes. He's a very, very decent player, Simon.
He is, yeah.
He's a very decent player who is, for me now, been the subject of the frustration of Man United supporters, maybe, and then for captaincy.
But why?
Just maybe because if he makes a mistake or whatever, and people seem to be, is it all Man U fans or is it Or is it England supporters? Because I can't remember him ever letting England down. In fact, I always think he's done particularly well. I thought the other night, in the first game against Ukraine, he did very, very well.
Do you look at the other centre halves? I'll ask you first, right, before I get into comparison with other centre halves, because I think he's an average centre half. But then again, I've called you mediocre, so what do I friggin' well know? Right? But
I can get you though.
But the point is that I didn't think he was an £80 million centre half, and I think he's a decent player, and I think there's no reason for this abuse that he's getting. I think it's unfair and it's unjust. Right?
Yeah,
but. What if you
Where does it come from, Simon? Because that is the biggest thing.
I don't know.
I'm asking you as a journalist now, media
I'm not a bloody journalist.
Well, well, where does it come from?
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether it's come from the Greek stuff and people thinking you got a bit ahead of yourself and got a bit flash the way you behaved over there, or whether it's got from the robotic interviews that he did when they were a little bit dialed in, or whether it's because they're looking for a scapegoat and he's just got the receiving end of it because he's a big fella and he was the Man United captain. I don't like it. I don't think people criticising his performance and questioning Gareth Southgate's propensity to pick him when he's not regular in the side, I don't think that's wrong. And I think some of the shit that's being said about the fact that pundits and media are after him, I don't think it's that. I think the fans, and you can say that pundits have said something which gives the fans an excuse to say something. People are responsible for their own actions. But did you see him when you see him as a Man United captain?
I heard it the other night though, saying howling round Hampden.
Yeah, but that was Scotland.
Yeah, Scotland. Yeah, so the Scottish fans have jumped all over it as well.
They would do, wouldn't they?
And it seems to be that everywhere he's going, because he's getting it maybe at home as well in Manchester, that every ground is replicating it, if you like.
Did you think when you had him? Did you think he was a? Did you think? No, you couldn't have at the time, right? Because ultimately, Hull to Manchester United is a.
No, he went to Leicester, didn't he? He was sold him to Leicester.
I know he did. But what I'm saying when you had him at Hull, right?
Yes.
I was going to ask you the question: did you think he'd be a Man United captain? But you can't have seen that because he wasn't at Man United. But when he was at Man United, did you think, knowing what you know of him, that's a Man United captain?
Well, he's got a certain strength about him, and he's a very, very decent man. Whether he's a Man United captain, who knows, Sammy? Everybody's got to make their opinions on that. First of all, it's very, very difficult to be captain when you're not playing.
Yeah.
So straight away, you've got a decision from Ten Hag has now got to say, well, he ain't going to play. I think the way the managers towards him has sort of said, here's the door, you're not for me. Fair enough.
That's the way it works sometimes.
That's the way it works. That's the way it happens to us all. And that's why I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that he didn't take it up on it. But the actual stuff that he's getting, it borders on ridicule. And I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because
we're taking the piss, aren't they?
Yeah. Taking the piss.
Yeah.
That's not great. And let's be fair, he's still Gareth picks him.
Yeah. I don't think it was wise for his mum to come out, but then again, it's easy for him to say it's not my son. If you were giving him advice, Steve, what would you tell him to do?
Well, I nearly rang him in the summer because I've known him before, and I was at a wedding where he was at. I think personally I'd have moved on.
Yeah.
I think once the manager's done that and showed his cards to you, then you move on.
Cast, isn't it?
You've got to move on and go and find yourself a career again, boost it again, and feel respected in the audience that you're at. And certainly under Moisey, I thought it would have been a really good fit.
Yeah, I would have thought so too.
I thought it would have been a really, really, really good fit.
It made Kurt Zouma look like a player. That's just another centre-back opinion.
You seem to be picking on centre-backs at the moment, Sam.
I know. Too much to say for myself. When you look at your managerial career, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 clubs, how do you describe it how do you think of it? You've got Sheffield, Huddersfield, Wigan, Palace, Birmingham, Wigan again, Sunderland, all of these sort of not the most glamorous of clubs.
No.
When you look at your career,
the two big ones I had, Newcastle, the glamour, and Villa. Newcastle was a different circumstance. I was in trouble, but Aston Villa was in trouble when I took over that. They'd won 4 games in 54.
Yeah.
They were absolutely beaten, and it was one of the most difficult experiences, Aston Villa. But I will say that's why I've said to many people, it's why I've enjoyed the Championship, because it's in more even field, if you like, Simon. For instance, going back the 20-odd years when me and you worked together, we got a Popovich for nothing.
Yeah.
We got Steve Vickers on loan. We you got a few players around us where.
What'd you bring Steve Vickers up for? You had
No,
you had a bleeding turn
him
because you couldn't get him.
No, because you wouldn't buy him.
I wouldn't let you let him train up in Middlesbrough is what I wouldn't let you do.
He was for nothing. Well, again, that was one of the disputes. But but we had won 7 on the spin when he was in there. And then Brian was giving us a for nothing, Simon. So we're going to relive that all that.
Okay.
But so that's why I say in the Championship, when I look at the Premier League now, I would think that the clubs that I've managed in the Premier League, even Newcastle, and I'm going to get slaughtered for saying this, right? They were in the bottom half. I remember going to China and watching 10, 12 games of the season before when Rafa was in charge, who they all idolised Rafa.
Yeah.
And he'd finished 12th and 13th and gone about it this way and I thought, I ain't going to change much here. He defends deep, right? We'd lost Mitrovic up the pitch and we need a centre forward and we need some players in. But this is the way he's gone about it and been awful to watch, which I hold my hand up and say we weren't a great watch. But how do I keep Newcastle
in the Premier League?
In the Premier League.
But that was your brief, wasn't it?
That's the brief.
That's the brief that Ashley gave you.
Yeah, Simon, when I tell people that Callum Wilson, we had to break the wage structure to get Callum Wilson from Bournemouth. And we're at Newcastle.
But you know why you were unpopular with Newcastle fans. You know why to a period of time, because you were appointed by Mike Ashley, you were his man, and Rafa Benitez used the media to back channel Ashley all the time, and so that's why they loved Benitez and disliked you. But we'll get into Newcastle in a minute because I know that's a very significant part of your ambitions in life, and you fulfilled them and what went with it. But I want to talk a little bit more about the journey that you went on with some of the other clubs. Yeah. Not all of them, because we'll be all day. No, there's so many of them.
Yeah.
But clubs like Villa, because I remember you and I speaking, and I think I'm right. That there was a possibility that you were going to get called up for an interview for the England manager's job.
I was interviewed for it, yeah.
Yeah, right. And, I knew I was right about that. And you were a little disappointed that you didn't get where you wanted. And I remember saying to you, don't worry about that fucking Pardew, didn't even get on the list. And he thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread. But you...
Only you can say that, Sam.
But I said to you, don't go, because you were looking around. I think you'd left Hull because you'd had a fallout with the son of, it was Ehat's son, wasn't it, at Hull? And his son was getting a little bit busy and getting involved with and you just got promoted, didn't you?
Yeah.
And he was getting busy with the recruitment policy and you were falling out with him, right?
Yeah.
So you left, right? And I said to you, wait for a London job. As much as it burns my arse, Palace might need someone in there and they're an established Premier League club now, or Fulham might be a good job for you. And then the Villa job came up and I knew how difficult the Villa job was because I had a look at buying it and I knew how much of a mess they were in when they got relegated.
Yeah.
But the experiences that you had at Villa, they went difficult for you. And in terms of the abuse that you got, the idea that people started to take this... There's always been this accusation about you that you haven't been loyal enough and you've jumped between clubs, right? And you've had that conversation with me and we don't need to pick the bones out of it again, right? And you've been prepared to jump across cities and go from Sheffield, from one side of Sheffield to the other, from one side of the Midlands to the other, one side of North East to the other.
I'm going to stop you there. I let you down, all right? I was let down by Huddersfield, right? The owner sells me centre forward on deadline day. We're top of the league. I've got a good
I know the market. I've got a good. I'm not having a pop at you.
Sheffield. No. I've got to just put you right there and say Sheffield United. My first job, I walked out of them because all I got was 2 people fighting above me. It was more difficult managing these 2.
Yeah, no, you're missing my point, Steve.
So I get jumped from club to club.
You're missing my point. I didn't say it was right. I said the perception at times, because when you came to me and you went through me, there was this perception about your ability to stick anywhere, and there will always be a backstory as to why someone leaves, right?
Of course.
And there will always be a backstory and 2 sides of every sort of set of circumstances. Obviously, jumping across cities is a rare thing, isn't it? Right? So that will give people the perception of how can you go to Newcastle when you've been at Sunderland? How can you go to Villa when you've been at Birmingham? How can you go to Wednesday when you've been at Sheffield? And the word loyalty will come into it. We know that loyalty is crap, right? No one's got any loyalty in this world. You're as loyal as long as it suits the person that's going to be involved in the discussion.
Yeah.
But my point was is that when you went into Villa, you went into a difficult situation, but you, as opposed to the observation at times, rightly or wrongly, right? You don't need to defend yourself against it because I'm not accusing you of it.
No.
Right? About the idea that you jump around when it suits you, because everybody does it all the time when it suits them. But you were then beginning to get a tag as a manager that was a dinosaur, that has run its course, and that you weren't at the cutting edge of football anymore. And what does that make you feel like?
I hear all
as
the time
manager?
now. Yeah, I feel like all the time now. It's all about style and these words that come out all the time. And identity is the word. And
DNA.
You are a dinosaur. Well, let's be brutally honest now.
What is a dinosaur? What do they
dinosaur ruled the world for 300,000 years. Did they?
They were majestic, and they're dead now and
Listen,
extinct.
things change, and you have to change with it. Of course you do, Simon.
Has it changed you? Because I remember you as a younger manager, and you wanted to play. And it's all bullshit, Steve. You know, winning games is the key component, isn't it? And people are getting a bit over egging the pudding about how you win games. Most owners want you to just fucking win games, right?
Of course.
The point is I remember you as an expansive, wanting to get forward manager. Have you changed? Has that changed in you, or is it just simply in the Premier League you've got a limited resource of players in the clubs that you've been in, and you've got to manage what you've got because you're going to lose your job quicker if you lose games rather than how you play?
Take losing the job out the road. Right. Especially in the Premier League. I was talking to you when we joined Palace.
Yeah.
We were innovative then. We were a bit before time. Who played three at the back? Not very many. And played with real wingers, and one in particular, Julian Gray, who was a winger, not a wing back. So we were good to watch, exciting. But I believe that team was as good a match as anybody in that division in the Championship. Absolutely. And we could win.
Yeah.
And we could win playing a certain way. Yeah. Happy days, great.
Because it was like for like.
Like for like, no problem at all. When you are, now I've gone into Sunderland, for example, that just avoided relegation. Now, that ain't going to just go away. What we did do was we got a few players up the top end of the pitch in Asamoah Gyan, Darren Bent and a few others. Yeah. And it changed because they could go and win a game. Mm-hmm. They could change. And really it come about at Villa, possibly then in Newcastle, that I was this washed up old dinosaur who, and I'll say that in the Premier League, I feel a little bit for Burnley now. They weren't such about it last year. The way he went about it was wonderful to watch. And
you think he's going to have to change?
And
he ain't changing right now, but he's getting bashed up.
He might have to change, Simon, and that's what I'm saying. He might have to. Now, does he change his philosophies? Because he's Vincent Kompany and he wants to play this way. I totally get it. Does he want to play this way? And he probably will. However, if he continues to play that way,
he's going to get smashed.
There's an
irony about that, isn't there? Because probably if he goes down, which they will do if they continue to play this way, because they can't play the football that they played in the Championship in the Premier League, he might go down with a bit more nobility rather than banking up and changing the direction, and people might have more. There's an irony about that, isn't there?
There's an irony about it, and he's young and he wants to play that way, a bit like when I was at Palace, wanted to play in the front foot, and I was used to playing in Manchester to win. Yeah. You had to win. You have to win at whatever cost, and be exciting. Man, you can never be dull. And so it's something that I have to try and readdress. But I think it's come about because of being at clubs where Newcastle, let's go to Newcastle straight away.
Yeah, I'm going to take you there now.
I would take me there now. Is the biggest and best job that I could have ever got was me small town.
Is it?
Is it?
Is it not? Because I'll tell you why. I'll qualify it for you. I mean, I think I know that early after you left me, went to Birmingham, there was an interest with you to go to Newcastle, and I think you probably felt, I can't jump again. Right? But speaking...
In 2006, Simon, they came for me.
Came for you.
However, and I'm going to tell you now, though, they wanted Sir Bobby above me and me to groom Alan Shearer beneath me.
Yeah, that's not good, is it?
So, thankfully, I didn't take it up. And driving away from that interview was like, wow. They were trying to buy Wayne Rooney at the time.
Yeah.
And Freddie, God rest his soul, would put this upon me that we were going to put Sir Bobby upstairs and we want to groom Alan. And I come away saying, I can't do that.
No, I don't blame you.
I can't do it. And that's where that fell down.
But I spoke to Graham and I spoke to Sam, and they both talked about this being the impossible job. Is it? Was it? Given those circumstances, forget what's happening now, because we'll cover that in a second. But was it the most difficult job to do? Because I've often felt that the Geordies they get incredibly irritated with me because I think they've got unreasonable expectations previously.
The one thing about Mike Ashley, never tell you any bullshit.
Right.
Here's the pot of money we've got. This is what the club's earned this year. This is what we've got. It's not a lot. It never is, but that's what we've got. So get on with it. And he would be as brutal as that to say, get on with it.
Well, you know,
he never interfered. He would never ring me up and say, by the way, why you haven't picked him for that one at the weekend, or this, that, and the other one. I worked closely with Lee Charnley, the CEO at the time, and that was my port of call.
Yeah.
Very difficult when you've only got a small pot of money. And the one thing that I would like to think is we bought quite well. Joe Linton was already done.
Right.
But I did make a reservation straight away had he scored enough goals, because when I seen him play...
You'd have him now, though, wouldn't you?
Where he's playing in midfield.
Yeah.
A bit different at Newcastle's number 9, because there's something about that, the number 9. And I had to have the conversation with Joe to take it away from him. Can you imagine what that was like? Not easy. So, because, you know, we had just took Callum Wilson, who the reason why he wanted to come to Newcastle, he wanted the number 9, and he wanted to be the goal scorer. Simon, it's all to do with the perception of where Newcastle was when I had them, was stay in the league, keep us up, compared to now.
But you never said that, did you? Because, I mean, I did an interesting evaluation in front of this. Did you, I mean, I think these numbers are right, that you spent, under your management, about 100 million quid over 2 seasons. And it cost them, it's going to be a statistic you're going to like before you get up about it. £111,000 per point won is what your cost implication was, and finished 12th and 13th. Eddie, at this moment in time, has spent nearly 300 million quid. Take off Joe Willock, because that was yours, right?
Yeah.
Right. So he's currently running at £225,000 a point. So he's going at double the cost implications of what you were given.
Yeah.
When you look at it, when you look at the situation now, and I kind of, you've got to take some on the chin here, because some of these players, like Joe Linton and Almiron, are performing at a fucking completely different level.
Do you know something?
Sorry to be blunt.
Yeah. It's the same when Joe Linton, we moved when we got Callum Wilson in. I moved Joe Linton to play off the left. I never in a million years thought he was a middle and midfield player, playing on the left-hand side of midfield. He did fantastically well playing on the left-hand side. And Almiron, even before I got there, could never score the goals that he did for Atlanta. However, I picked him every week.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, I had Callum Wilson, Joe Linton, Almiron, and when Willock came as well as a young one, and of course we had St. Maximum, who was the one, who could win me a game.
Yeah. I would imagine he's got the heart the size of a pea, though. That's a different discussion.
He was an acquired taste, but again, loved football. But he was different. He was different, and you had to stroke that ego, and I had to stroke that ego and manage him, because he was, with him not in the team, then we would find it very, very difficult not to win. So it's one of them managerial ones. But what I will say is, then, you know, you've got this little pot of money or whatever, and now it's completely different.
Yeah.
What Newcastle, they'd seen it. The hard part for me was a bit like Villa too. In the not too distant past, they'd seen that team playing the Barcelonas, playing in the Champions League, and then all of a sudden that's gone away to go to the Championship, and now you're fighting for survival every year, is a different kettle of fish for them, and they weren't going to expect.
Does it make you sad that, because the Newcastle job is the job that you would have wanted, right? Because it would have fitted in with everything that you believed in football. This was your hometown side. It probably would have made your parents very proud, and not probably, categorically didn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately, they never seen it, Simon, because they both passed away before I got it. But I'm sure they're in their own way. My dad would have said to me, "What the bloody hell are you doing?"
Would he?
Well, he would have done, yeah.
Right.
Would have done, yeah. But he would have been enormously proud in his own way, I'm sure. And so was I.
Does it make you sad, though, that what you got was a Newcastle? Because Ashley's, with respect to Mike, I've known him for years, his focus was not to cost himself any more money than it already cost himself, to run the football club in an economic fashion that was basically about income generated, which, by the way, I don't disagree with, and I wouldn't as a former owner.
Well, when you see some of these clubs,
but that left you in a situation where your brief was this, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Keep us in the division.
Yeah.
That was your brief.
That was the brief. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep us up.
But that's a shit end of the stick, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Your brief at Villa was we've got a bit of a car crash here. Remy Gard and God knows else what have done to us, and Sherwood and whatever else has left us in a position where we've gotten relegated. We've got Gabby Bongler in the dressing room and God knows whatever else. Right? I'll let you have that one if you want to. And you need to rebuild, and you're not going to get any credit for any of that. And people are going to listen to this thinking I'm backing you up and supporting you. Yeah. But I also know, having been involved in owning a football club, what it takes to rebuild something. You got none of the advantages of the upsides, all the downsides. So it must make you sad, given it's Newcastle. And we'll get on to the Craig Hopes of the world in a minute and their particular brand of journalism against you. But you must look at it and go, what did I kick a cat?
Yeah. Yeah, I can look at that and think, let me put one thing. I am delighted. Could have been quite easy for me to say no. I knew it was going to be difficult. When I expected people like Graham, Kenny Dalglish, Big Sam, all say, Steve, you know what you're doing? You know what you did? It's the most difficult. Graham even said to me, I've managed in Merseyside, I've managed in Istanbul, and I've managed in Glasgow. Nothing is
prepares you for this.
It prepares you for Newcastle because of what it entails. I'm still delighted I took it. Look, I'm from the bowels of Wallsend, who had to escape there to go and make me living or whatever I did. And to go back there, I thought, well, this is the icing on the cake, if you like. This is all the hard work. I'd love to have played for them. Never happened because they turned me away when I was a kid. Love to have played for them. This is the best thing. And that could be.
This is the next best thing.
That's the next best thing that could be, yeah. And I was absolutely really, really proud to take it.
Yeah.
And then get engrossed in it. And by the way, too, what also was difficult, right in the middle of COVID as well. So we had no crowd. Some would say that might be a benefit to you, Steve. But I do believe the people who are bumped into in the street, not the people on social media, the vast majority are bumped into the street say, hey, you didn't do a bad job. You did all right. Yeah. And that's what it'll be. It's never going to be a roaring success. And it was never going to be because we didn't have the resources to do it.
Does it disappoint you? Do you look back on it and think, I'm not trying to make you bleed here, but to get a job like Newcastle, to mean what it like, for me, when I lost Palace, it broke my heart for a period of time.
I know it did.
And for you to lose Newcastle, you kind of lose Newcastle, don't you? You go in there and manage the team, and then the wheels are coming off. You're getting barrel loads of abuse. Everyone's talking about
a bit like, and it bordered on ridicule. A bit like what you're talking about. People
Harry
taking
Maguire,
the piss. Or Harry Maguire.
Well, this is my point.
This is the thing. It's like a Harry Maguire taking the piss. That, do you know, Craig Hope on my third game in charge said I'd sent on a substitute and just told him to go and play anywhere he wanted. As if.
Yeah.
And, you know, people jumped all over it. People followed him in the Northeast. I don't know why.
But why? Well, why
do they follow? I really don't know. There was a sort of all of them came off the same hymn sheet.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's as if I'd send on a player to say, go and just play her any way you want. And then the following week we got badly beaten at Norwich. We were hopeless. He said that I couldn't take a warm-up. You know, he's actually putting these things down. And I wasn't even into my tenure now in Newcastle. I just started, and I thought it's going to be very, very difficult because that's just the start of it, and it never ceased. So he had his own agenda that I shouldn't, in his opinion,
you shouldn't have
been the manager of Newcastle United, which I respect. He's entitled to it, but please be a little bit fair with it, you know, and he wasn't. It was quite simple, just a witch hunt from the start.
Yeah. Did it affect? I mean, I know Alex, your son, was upset.
Well, sometimes, you know, he's young and he's still got that fire in his belly. He wants to fight the world, Simon. Yeah. And there was a bit for me where it did affect the family, which is the first time. And you know, my good lady,
I do.
If I said to her I was going to Saudi Arabia tomorrow, she'd say, "Okay, Steve, I'll be on the plane right behind you or with you." It simple as that. And when it affects them, it was the first time in 40 odd years that I'd seen it affected the whole family, which was the difficult part. And it's not easy when you're at the house at 2:00 in the morning and people are you happen to call the police and all this nonsense. It's total ridiculous. But I have to say, the vast majority who I bumped into in the street were, keep going, Steve, keep your head up, and we know you're in difficult circumstances, you're doing an all right job.
You get offered a job in Saudi, you going?
Simon, I'm not going to say no to you, because when you see the colossal sums of money, for me, it's not all about money now, because I've got to a certain age.
You've done all right.
I've done all right.
You've done all right.
I've done all right, Simon, yeah, thankfully. But when I look at it from afar, you're intrigued by it. And if somebody's going to make you a really decent offer, then you'd have to consider it. I'm not going to bullshit you and say no. But then again, I'm open to anything. Can I help a young manager? Is a director of football role of a young chairman to try and get him through the pitfalls? Because, going back to the Hull days, when the son, he wanted his own ideas and said to him, but whoa. And maybe when I was a little bit older now, then to try and help him in a way.
You're a Southgate fan?
Am I a Southgate fan? Yeah, he's done fantastically well. And, he's got the semi-finals and quarter-finals. And, yeah, I know you have your reservations, don't you?
I do, because I don't think we've ever beaten anybody that we possibly would have difficulty. Listen, the Germans are the Germans, and we beat them, but it was a version of the Germans, and we can see what the Germans are doing right now.
Yeah.
My criticism of Gareth, insofar as I'm entitled to have an opinion, I think he's done brilliant with the media. I think he's done brilliant in creating a harmonised environment where there's no cliques and none of that crap, and everyone wants to play for England.
He's done great
that
there.
well.
Let me tell you where it's a bit different now. I believe we've got a superstar on our hands.
In Bellingham.
Yeah. That could be just the key. The key to it.
Do you think we can win the Euros?
Well, I wouldn't back against us.
I'm beginning to come round to that school.
I wouldn't back against us. I mean, there was a lot said about the Scotland-England game the other day.
There's levels on it. And
all of a sudden there you can just see the gulf, Simon. And that's what I talk about in management.
Yeah.
If you're playing against Man City and you're at some of the clubs I've been at, there's the gulf. And it was pretty evident the other night when England turned over to Scotland very, very easily. Yeah. They were magnificent in a horrible atmosphere to play in. I'm sure it was vociferous to say the least, but they looked magnificent. So I wouldn't back against us, Simon. Not a chance. And in this kid Bellingham,
superstar.
I mean,
he's a superstar already.
Come on, he's a superstar. He's walked into Real Madrid, a 20-year-old, and they're saying he's the best thing since sliced bread. Above Zidane and all this they're talking about. Incredible. And he's English, which is great.
Steve, I really enjoyed it. Thank you for being so upfront with me today.
Thanks for letting me come on. Great to see you.
Up Front with me, Simon Jordan, is brought to you by William Hill. Future episodes can be found on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. 18+, please gamble responsibly.